We're live. Welcome. Dr. Paul here. And I am here again with the illustrious Jeremy Fox, who you may have seen starting to be interviewed by a lot of luminaries out there in the public intellectual space. He's got a natural gift for simplifying the complex, I think, which is
Thank
called
you.
elegance, frankly, by
Thank you.
definition. Yeah, and his birthday is coming up, so happy birthday to him. That's why uh, I'm giving him extra kudos today,
Thank
his
you.
birthday gift. Uh, so here we are with yet another in our series on what we're calling ego defense superpowers. That's to kind of normalize this complex scientific idea originating with Freud, then his daughter Anna Freud, and then later George Vaillant, um,
Uh,
and up till recent years has been the only way to stratify and measure, as a psychoanalyst would, one's maturity level, really. Today we don't really call it maturity level anymore. We have to make everything soft and fuzzy to not offend, so we call it emotional intelligence today. I
mhm.
don't like that term. It kind of makes everything blurred together. Whereas I like the term maturity because, as you're going to see in today's quick program, the antidote, the true superpower to what Jeremy is proposing as our topic, being undoing. Undoing is an ego defense we're going to get into. It's primitive, it's childlike, it's immature, and it messes up our lives, makes us neurotic even.
Right.
Whereas its antidote, we think, is perhaps integrity as a mature ego defense or character virtue. So there we go. Integrity as a superpower that defeats the immature ego defense called undoing. So what do you
Yes.
think of undoing, Jeremy?
Well, I think it's one that doesn't get spoken of enough. I was looking for defense mechanisms that really are kind of the under discussed, tricky ones. And I think so. Undoing basically is the desire to reverse something and make it as if it doesn't happen. So Freud would call it nullifying an unacceptable thought with a symbolic counteract. And so that opens up the floodgate to talk about sort of magical thinking and the idea
Yes.
of doing some kind of ritual to take harmful, well, perceived harmful impulses and feelings away. And so this dovetails nicely with OCD. So
Yes.
people
Yes.
often getting the urge to do something to feel better. And it's not a psychotic delusion. People know like that if they wash their hands, 3 times, it doesn't like it's or if they don't wash their hands that number, something bad's not gonna necessarily gonna happen, but they feel strongly it would, and it's a lot easier to just do the ritual and get the feelings out of the way.
Mm.
That creates the loop. So, a lot of rich material here. Um, I was digging into this defense, and it can often derive from children actually struggling with the paradox of love and aggression or hostility. So if a child gets angry at a parent and strikes out, that can trigger that child's self preservation instinct because kids, as we know from traumatology, cannot afford to hate a parent or think that they're bad, basically, because you have to
Mm.
rely on that parent. And so that's where you get a lot of different defenses. I'm actually thinking of another, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to share that now. We're going to save it for later. But undoing can be a result of being angry at the parent,
Yes.
experiencing that anger, feeling immense shame, and the desire to push that feeling down. And so to do something the opposite, right? So
Yeah.
to go be ultra nice or apologetic. So there's so much application here. I mean, you could look at the apology tour that a lot of influencers do if they offend people, and it's kind of like, how good is the apology? How much do they
Oh,
beg?
yeah.
How much
Yeah.
do they? Yeah. Even if they don't change their character, I'm not going to give any examples
Yeah.
because I don't want to get famous that way. But it just you can look at like the underlying theme here is it's really acting without character
Thinking.
development. It's a cover up and not a cleanup. I wrote that quote down that I thought of. That's really what it is. It's putting stuff under the rug instead of sweeping your home.
Oh, it's a cover up instead of a cleanup. I like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, I know you like video games too, right? So
Yeah.
as you were saying that, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this enjoyable video game from yesteryear, Frogger.
Oh, yes. Frogger, of course. That's a
So you're,
classic.
and then there's a newer version called Crossy Road, where you have to cross the road and you keep
Okay.
jumping around to get away from the cars. Or in Frogger, you had to keep jumping logs to get across the river, right? So
Yes.
I thought of that game when you told me, hey, undoing kind of isn't just this monolithic thing like the only technique your unconscious mind would use. You might jump to displacement, which is
Yes.
an unacceptable target of your anger. You just throw it onto somebody else who will accept it instead of the parent that you both love and yet are angry at, right? So you jump
Yes.
around logs, right?
You
And
do.
the other thing I always like thinking of the master model of psychology I view as the evolutionary psychology's triune brain model, of course, where you got reptilian brain, that's the unconscious, which is instinct based. Then you got the emotional brain, the limbic system, which is emotional thinking and behaviors, which is a little more mature. I think of
Yes.
that as almost neurotic at the ego defense levels. And then the most mature level is the conscious mind, where you intentionally do things, intentionally make decisions, and you don't impulsively react to things. That's the conscious mind. So if we have
Yes.
all three operating at the same time, then the example of a child that you gave who impulsively acts out, blurts out their anger, but
Yeah.
that's their unconscious mind doing that. It's their
Yeah.
instinctual response. But then their conscious mind simultaneously says, oh my gosh, I'm guilty. I shouldn't have done that. I offended. I need to undo this. It's like they're on the edge of this chaos between they're consciously aware of what they're doing, yet their unconscious mind is running the show sometimes.
Oh, man. That's really good. I mean, you make me think of polyvagal theory, and I think I'll write about this too soon, and we can do a whole thing about it. I mean, there's the social engagement response to act toward what we would call pro-social behavior. And so we always hear about antisocial behavior, but
Yeah,
pro-social behavior is you want to talk about virtues, that could be a whole talk. So basically,
yeah,
you have the more fight or flight, immediate response, the fight response. And then if somebody looks at that, and they could say like a kind of ventral vagal response, um, and then you get into like the social engagement response of frontal lobe behavior and just sort of the back and forth between those at any given span of seconds. If someone is experiencing a sort of rapid emotional shift, like if someone comes up and does something like, oh, or if a parent's really, really going in on you and you're a kid and you're just kind of struggling to keep it together, which is why I think it's so damaging when you grow up in very chaotic homes where it's just the norm to go through so much emotional turmoil. Some people become very neurotic. And I've noticed that people who fear their own shadow and they have great darkness in terms of like wishes that they've harbored or even still harbor. And it's so important to take that and say, let's bring it to the therapy office, let it out, let's reprocess it with EMDR. Like, this is the place to voice that because the more you jam it down and try to do the rituals and the ways to cover that up, you become afraid of your own shadow and afraid of your own emotional, um, very normal, often emotional responses like anger. And so you get people who are chronically bound up and emotionally kind of hunkered down. And it's like, okay, so that has to be voiced. It's okay to feel anger. It's always okay to acknowledge your emotions. And that's such a way through it.
it's it's interesting, like the parallel process that goes on with other authors on
Yeah.
Substack and elsewhere, because you just made me think of like several other linked things here.
Yeah.
Before going on, and keeping in mind that we want to arrive at integrity as the cure
Yeah.
here, as the mature response to all this. Um, I also thought of another similar, very similar ego defense. In fact, so similar to undoing that I needed to look up the difference between the
Oh
two.
yeah.
And
I bet I
okay,
know.
so it's this. When I thought of the ultimate example of what is undoing, and I think of an obsessive person doing this, I think of guess who? Shakespearean Lady
Yeah.
Macbeth.
Yes. I
Late
put that. That's so funny you
out,
say
out,
that.
damn spot, out,
Yeah.
damn spot. Wash my hands to get rid of the blood that is on my hands, right? So
Oh
that's
yeah.
undoing. But I also simultaneously thought of all of those preachers, religious
The
leaders
indulgences. I've yes.
who are doing sexual predator stuff, right?
Oh yes.
And then
Yes.
they're fighting against sexual predators in their public life, but
Yes.
privately they're being a sexual predator, or they're fighting against drug abuse,
Oh
methamphetamines or something
yeah.
in their
Yeah.
public life, but they're secretly doing methamphetamine.
Yeah. And
That's
part of
not
that's
undoing.
reaction formation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny. I actually got the example of Lady Macbeth and meant to bring that up earlier. That's amazing. And I also have the example of the indulgences where the Roman Catholic Church centuries ago, and this is during Martin Luther's day, would say, well, if you
Hmm.
give this amount of money, your sins are absolved. Like if you give to the Crusades. And so it's a way to do something that enables you to feel better. And the problem is that if you just do that to take away your sins versus learn to resist those impulses, you don't grow as a person at all.
Right. Right. Like if
So,
you donate, you're a humanitarian. We might
right.
even think of a prominent financier who had been in the news and
Oh,
then deleted himself. Something like that as an example
right. Yeah.
that we won't name here.
Right. Of
Well,
course. Very
so
good,
then
good example.
so then what this must mean is in the primitive ego defenses and immature ego defenses, it's what Freud always said that the superego sometimes is battling against the id impulses with no ego grown to mediate between the two. So you
Right.
have a battle instead of a negotiation. And so the person is kind of split. Even if they're an adult, they're split between, well, skeletons in the closet versus public virtue. They're split between that,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they don't know what's the real me. Some of them even wonder, am I truly a good person, or maybe am I truly a bad person?
Right.
Instead of, I want to strive to be a good person and channel the bad impulses toward good, um, called sublimation. Doing sublimation is one cure of this undoing. Maybe sublimation's even closer than integrity. Integrity is a generalized
Sure.
wholeness, accepting your bad parts and redirecting them and giving appropriate apologies, and then accepting yourself as you are, imperfect, but
Yes.
honest. And then one last thing, I know I talk a lot, but I wanted to
That's
bring in
fine.
these up. I told you there's a parallel process going on right now with other
Yes.
authors with what they're printing. And I think it might have been Rob Henderson, or it might have been Gerwinder. I think Rob Henderson, who was quoting from, maybe it was Nathaniel, or no, he was quoting George Orwell. Yeah, he
Okay.
wrote an article on George Orwell recently, and I highlighted this quote because it was so good. It's like the golden nugget of you writing an autobiography, but even more, it's a golden nugget of you being a public writer and intellectual, because you need to be a real person, an authentic
Yes.
person. And what Rob quoted Orwell as saying is, you're not doing a legitimate autobiography unless you are revealing some of your worst flaws. In fact, you need to find your worst flaws and put them out there and say, this is
Yes.
who I was, this is what I did. And then you're truly an autobiography brighter. And
Yes.
that should be true of, any legitimate, authentic presentation of yourself to the public is you admit your flaws,
Yes.
and how you've
Exactly.
corrected them, tried to correct them. And doesn't
Well,
that relate then to undoing and reaction formation?
yeah, it does. I mean, because there's a problem here. I think you've helped me bridge a gap here in my own specialty or subspecialty about digital dissociation. I mean, in today's world, there's a big problem because if you, depending on your character flaws, like the directions they take or your proclivities, it may be in somebody's best interest not to be that authentic and to avoid angering a mob. And so what can happen is people, I mean, that could be anything, any less than perfect trait doesn't always play well on social media or videos unless it's kind of an inspiration story or something within certain limits. And so I think people can often curate everything so perfectly with social media presence and with what they want to create, including like maybe an autobiography, that it really just becomes an exercise in seeming, to be this curated, immaculate, precious self.
Ah,
And so
okay.
I
Yeah.
think when people deal with digital dissociation or feeling disconnected from the persona they create, it's often because it's very two-dimensional and they don't
Yes.
want to risk any misunderstanding. And so everything has to
Yeah.
be very, very, very workshopped and manicured. And so you have
Mm, you're right.
yeah, and so the
You-
ego doesn't really play a part of like, "Hey, I'm growing and I know I'm struggling with something that's really relatable or even not relate, but I'm gonna discuss this because we all have certain things we go through." Like that the ego is really kinda missing. A lot of the online culture is id driven, very primitive, very adult, you could say, content, or it's very super ego driven, like hustle culture, become the best
Okay.
you. Man, a lot of man stuff, a lot of stuff plays into male insecurity and tells them, "Well, you're just not good enough. No matter what the problem is, it's your fault," versus, "Hey, maybe some stuff's not your fault, and here's how to get
Mm.
through it anyway." Very
Well,
cool insight.
I, I, the past several weeks, I've been telling some of my friends and also my own wife that I wish we lived in the '90s again. um, when the golden age where people were good, they valued each other's opinions and they had real discussions, unlike today. But
Sure.
you're bringing to light kind of a deadly obstacle to Nathaniel Hawthorne slash, or no, toward George Orwell's advice
Right.
by way of Rob Henderson, which is how to be authentic. And then what you made me just think of is, well, at the very least, you better not be currently doing some dastardly thing
Well,
while
yeah.
portraying the opposite. But then I'm thinking, what happened with Rob, with his revelations of his faults and a lot of his story was horrible tragedy that many of us can associate with in bits and parts, like the foster care that he went through. But he discussed having had bad grades, having drank a lot at some point in his youth, used some drugs, but definitely did some vandalism. So he
Yeah.
revealed these adolescent, dark, unwitting, unthoughtless, impulsive behaviors, and peer pressure. And that was his big revelation. And he does admit that he still smokes, that he still hasn't kicked smoking or cigar smoking or cigarette smoking. So that's revealing a flaw, but it's not a flaw like the guy that owned an island and deleted himself.
Sure.
It's not that bad of a thing to be a smoker. So maybe you need to do some measuring. But Jeremy, for your use with your amazing idea of digital dissociation as a new event in human psychology that's modern, I got an idea as to
All right.
what is limiting our ability to truly be authentic with each other. It's that I call it continuous judgment day. Now, when I grew up Catholic, I was taught that only God does the judging. and it happens on Judgment Day, and it's when you go to heaven and you wait for Judgment Day, and then you're going to get judged. But you're not
Right.
judged by some guy in his underwear in his parents' basement on Reddit.
Sure.
That
Agreed.
person's not God, or that person that works for a major magazine and is a blogger. That is not
Right.
God.
Right.
Whatever you conceive God to be. If you're a religious, then fine. Call it. You're not the ultimate human. Don't
Right.
be that arrogant or narcissistic that you are in a fit place to judge all of humanity except for yourself, right? That I think that's the limitation caused by the digital age on us
Yes.
truly being authentic with each other, because it's
Yes.
constant judgment day,
Yep, it is.
and people
So
more powerful than you, more godlike than you, are judging your every word now or in the past. That's why I say it's like judgment day, because it's your whole life recorded on
yeah,
audio, video, and text
right.
in the internet wayback machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you have to develop a strong ego in the classic analytic sense to say, what of this do I need to take in? Am I prone to super ego dominance? Am I going to allow the criticism of strangers to be masked by the voice or the appearance of my parents who maybe said something about my worth or which that's just hypothetical. Thank God my parents didn't hit me over the head with a lot of moralism that was empty. It was more actual morality, ethical, scriptural, biblical stuff. But a lot of people have hangups on on moralism. And so if they, and I mean like super scrupulous, like very prone to shame very quickly. And so online criticism can really be amplified by that. That's like the gas to the fire. So in other people, maybe they could have the defense of rationalizing and say every criticism, whether it's valid or not, is somebody being a hater. And so people like that have to recognize, well, wait, there may be some valid constructive criticism that you have to accept to grow. So undoing prevents both of those because it doesn't let you grow if you made a mistake, and it doesn't let you recognize maybe you need to do nothing if no mistake was made. You have to do something every time, basically. Like it's maybe somebody pays an indulgence and they didn't really need to. They just felt guilt for whatever emotional state they were having or what have you, and they paid something. It's like, well, maybe you have to struggle with that and say, why am I feeling shame or guilt unwarranted versus a quick fix? A quick fix is the wrong answer, whether you're right or wrong.
Hmm. Maybe you made me just now think of an image of when I was a child, the very formal Eastern Orthodox Catholic church that I went to with my parents. You had to do confession, right? You had to sit
Yes.
in this formal wooden cabinet, and the priest is speaking. You can see the silhouette
Yes.
of his head in this
Right.
wire mesh. It was beautiful and formal and sacred and all of this. It was like a profound experience. But wouldn't that be bring it into the modern day and into everyday life? Is there a way people can at least admit to themselves they did wrong and they need to change that without maybe making it global advertisement of their flaws?
Yeah, I think one of the things you can do is journal that. I think you can make amends and recompense where possible. And if not, if the person isn't open to discussion, then you can journal and you can be aware, like be proactive in your current friendship. So if someone got upset that they felt you weren't listening to them, then be more attentive, making a note with that person next time to ask them more about themselves and start practicing the opposite, but in a way, instead of having a ritual of like tapping, a certain part of your body or shaking your head. People do that often to like, with OCD or whatever ritual, like do a new character habit of listening, and that can be harder than a ritual, right? Because that's like a frontal lobe decided, very deliberate choice that involves giving of yourself in some way. And of course, do that with people who are going to reciprocate, unless you're in a charity situation or you're doing it as a ministry,
Yeah,
of course. But I would say determining what is the authentic path and opposite of whatever it is you're trying to undo. If it was some kind of selfishness or lust or greed, what does it look like to practice getting along with the opposite gender for another reason, different than lust, like a proactive replacement there versus something that's more like a punishment to the self. And so think on what that is and try to do the easiest or most doable version of that new opposite
I
habit
see.
and
I see.
compound that.
So, so if both sublimation, meaning if all you got is lemons, then make lemonade.
Right.
Do something good with your former bad experiences and maybe even negative behavior. I think of
Yeah.
the guy Frank the pilot from Catch Me If You Can,
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio. Like he was a fraud, but then he eventually
Yes.
went on to advise corporations how to stop fraud.
There you
Or
go.
the guy with the home title thief that you see on the commercials, who now helps home title protection, but
Very
he
cool.
used to be a thief. So that's kind of sublimation. It's taking your former negative trickster
Yeah.
criminal mind
Yeah.
behaviors and like turning them to good. So that's
Right.
one thing.
That's amazing.
What about integrity? Integrity, maybe if at some time you cheated somebody out of money, or if you stole something, then instead of doing undoing like Lady Macbeth, maybe the difference between undoing and integrity and sublimation is Lady Macbeth's fake washing of her hands didn't
Sure.
benefit anybody. It
No, it
didn't
didn't.
benefit society. It just lowered her anxiety.
Sure.
But if
Exactly.
you become generous, or you sublimate and you volunteer for a charity, you volunteer for a homeless shelter, or you help somebody in need, that's actually relieving your anxiety by
Yes.
a version of undoing that isn't undoing. It's generativity, giving
Yes.
to society in some way.
Yeah. Love that. I
I
gotta
had this,
run.
okay. All right, Jeremy,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us.
Just because of work.
All right.
All right. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
that's great.
Look forward to doing it again.
All right. Talk soon. Thank you.